I actually self-disclosed in my book about my own personal struggles with bullying because I wanted to put credibility to the work. Because if parents and educators were going to read the book or show dialogues to their kids, because I have sample dialogues in my book of situations, I wanted them to know that I knew what I was talking about. I get their experience. I get their pain. I know how hard it is. I know what the struggles are because I was there. I was a kid just like that.
This is Therapist Clubhouse, a podcast for private practice entrepreneurs. I'm Annie Schusler. This week, I'm talking to Danielle Matthews, a private practice entrepreneur, author, and speaker in Los Angeles, California. Listen as we talk about how she wrote a book in 4 months and created a 10-week program. You'll hear what it takes to step forward as a leader in your field. Listen for both the practical things that Danielle has done in her business and pay attention to what she says about her mindset game. Welcome, Danielle. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me, Annie.
So I'm really excited to dive into your entrepreneurial journey. And I know that your services go way beyond the therapy room and that you help children and their families and their schools deal with bullying. And you've created the empowerment space. So you've shared publicly that you were bullied as a kid and that now you're doing this to help kids so that they don't hurt themselves and so they feel more empowered. And you wrote a book recently. So can you start out just telling us about the book and what it was like to write it?
Yeah, so it's actually a really interesting experience because last year I started doing my own business full time. And part of that was giving presentations. And so an author actually came up to me, or I spoke with, said, you know what, Danielle, if you want to continue doing presentations and getting out in the community and bringing your voice out there, you need to write a book. So I was like, oh, that's a huge thing. And I was actually inspired by a colleague of mine who gave me information and about writing her own book and her experience. And then I felt like from one of the weeks of my program, I could make a book out of it. And it's called The Empowered Child, How to Help Families Cope, Communicate, and Conquer Bullying. And it's from a week of the program, which talks all about empowering our family, empowering our community to really heal from bullying and help their kids, guide them through success, and hopefully decreasing bullying and symptoms of depression in the meantime. So I spent last year writing the book. I had a book coach I worked with and our development team, and I wrote the book in 4 months and had it published. And it came out last year. I think it's almost exactly to the day is coming up of my anniversary that I wrote the book. And it's almost a year to this day that it came out. And for Bully Awareness Month, which is what I wanted.
Oh, wonderful. And who is your book coach?
Morgan McDonald of Paper Raven Books.
Excellent. Excellent. And that is the same person who worked with Mercedes Samudio
yes.
In writing her book. So that is a big endorsement, double endorsement.
Yes, absolutely. I'm very proud of Mercedes. And I spoke with her when I was looking at writing a book. And so we talked about the whole process and she was great.
Excellent. How has this book changed things for you?
You know, it feels really good. I'll give you an example because you never know how many people you touch, you know, by just looking at the Amazon sales and self-help or how that really works. But it was really wonderful, a client's mother come in to me the other day and say, I'm reading your book and I love this. This I love. I like take a picture of this because it's exactly how I felt. So it's like getting their experience and getting the validation that I got it right is wonderful for me. That's what impacts me and feels like I can make a difference in the world.
And have you been finding that having a book, like having that platform, has gotten you in front of more people?
Yes, to a degree, I would absolutely say so. I think writing a book can be very beneficial in many ways, and it gives you a level of credibility just by writing a book. I think that can be very helpful in ways, and I do think also having my blogs and my website has also been helpful.
Yeah. I imagine it really just, it boosts your expertise, like your perceived expertise. and your expertise, I guess, in that when you write a book, and I know Mercedes talked about this, you're really clarifying your message and you're getting even more, powerful in your messaging.
Yes, that's absolutely true, which is why I actually self-disclosed in my book about my own personal struggles with bullying, because I wanted to put credibility to the work. Because if parents and educators were going to read the book or show dialogues to their kids, it's because I have sample dialogues in my book of situations, I wanted them to know that I knew what I was talking about. I get their experience. I get their pain. I know how hard it is. I know what the struggles are because I was there. I was a kid just like that. So that's really important for me that I included my personal experience and self-disclosed.
Absolutely. And you mentioned that this book comes from just one part of your program. I think that's so interesting. So you have a program that I want to get into. Instead of trying to cover everything in your book, you focused in on one piece, which was still, from what you're saying, a ton.
Yes. It still was like a 156-page book with references and everything else. So yes, it was an old book coach or a coach of mine had suggested that to me a while ago and said, that's a really powerful week of your program. And so, why don't you look at doing a book on that could be really influential and helpful to, kids and families. And so I took one of the weeks. It's called the Empathy, Empowerment, and Engagement Week, which is all about how to talk to your kids about bullying. So I show sample dialogues in my book, and in the program there's exercises that the children and families can both do. So they get practice. I have a meeting with the parents where I do role playing. And so we really practice the skill of empathy, because I think empathy is really hard. I don't know about you, but I think I really learned empathy in graduate school. Like to really understand, and not that I wasn't empathic, but to really understand what empathy was in graduate school for me. So I really want to teach that to others, because a lot of times what I see is parents and other people think empathy is telling kids how to feel and what their actual feelings are. I think you're feeling this way and that way, and you tell them what to feel instead of saying, I'm wondering if this is what you're feeling. And that is much more of a powerful statement, because you're really asking the question. You're not telling them what you think they're feeling. And that right away gives power and control back to the kids instantly by just asking a question. So I really teach that in my book, and I teach that in the program. And then I teach the next step, which is empowering our children. And I'm a really big believer of, that's why it's called the Empowered Child, empowering kids to handle bullying by themselves with support and guidance from parents and other individuals and potentially schools. But kids have to know how to solve their own problems, because like I said, when kids get older, what if they have a boss they don't like? How do they need to learn how to deal with confrontation and conflict. And this is a way to learn it by the guidance I give in my book, because it's guiding their kids. It's not like not helping them, but it's doing it in a way that's not just handling it for them and helping them through a situation of bullying, coming up with a plan of action, role playing it out with what's realistic for them. Would this help if we practice these skills? And then I have something called the engagement, which is the final step of follow through of the plan, which is making sure that consistency and follow through happen, because with bullying, it comes and goes. It doesn't just go and never come back again. So we have to follow up, and we have to show consistency with our follow up in the plan to make sure the kids are okay.
Yeah. I think it's really brilliant that you looked at, I want to have this particular transformation happen with the book. I want parents to learn how to do this with their kids, and that you focused in on that so that they could actually do it. So they could actually read this, get the information, get the examples, and actually be able to be successful. And I know as a parent, like, that's not what we want to do. Like we want to solve it for our kids. We want to like jump in and just,
right.
I don't know, kick the bully's ass, or at least like.
That's right. I get that a lot. They just want to handle the problem. And so what an example that I give is that, let's say there is a kid on let's say a softball team, and they are teasing, someone else's kid. And the parent says, well, I'm going to go talk to the coach and let them know this can no longer happen, right? And they're not going to be bothering you anymore, and we're not going to let this happen. And I say to a parent, well, tell me what happens. They're like, well, what do you mean? This happened to my kid. And so this is what we did. And I said, well, tell me what could potentially happen from that. And I take them through the whole scenario to help them see what I'm looking for. And essentially what it's called is re-victimization. Because if kids have adults who then come in and bring the bully and victim together, or the bully gets in trouble, re-victimization is a much higher rate that it will happen because the kids did not handle it themselves. Now, if we're talking real dangerous situations, I'm talking something different. But I'm talking about just a confrontation between two kids that's over and over again and considered bullying. So we have to, I also really teach, and I talk about it in my book, that whole idea of re-victimizing kids. Not purposely, but a lot of people do it not knowing and thinking they're doing the right thing and holding the bully accountable.
Yeah. So tell us about the 10-week program.
So it is an evidence-based practice program. And so we do a lot of measurable things that we fill out in the beginning to get a baseline of how bad the bullying is. And we ask a lot of questions. So there's a lot of questionnaires to follow in the first one. And we talk about what the bullying is and assess for it. And then there's little activities that the kids come in and finish after every session. And we talk about it in the first session. Some of the sessions included are the fight, flight, freeze response, because I really think kids don't honestly know how their bodies are affected by bullying. And so we really talk about what that looks like. We model and show what role plays are. We demonstrate role plays in our sessions. And we also really talk about what to do with role plays to really be helpful in real life situations that they're dealing with. And that can be really effective. So we really talk about what the body feels, because I'll get calls sometimes saying my kids can't go to school. They're too anxious. They're throwing up all the time. And they're not aware how their body is actually being affected by the stress of the bullying. And so we talk about that in 1 week of the program. Another week is the empathy, empowerment, and engagement, where we really talk about how to talk to kids about bullying. One session's with just the parents, so we can do role playing and talk it through. Then we have one all together. And every week there's activities. So 1 week is writing a cartoon about a situation. One is writing a story. There's all different ways of doing activities that we do in the program.
And is it one family at a time or a group of families?
It's actually one family at a time.
Okay, cool. I can see why it would need to be. Yeah.
Yeah. And I get a lot of questions actually about that. Like, why aren't you doing it as a group? Why is it more one-on-one? Because I can hit more at one-on-one, because we also work with the school and go in for 3 sessions. And we ask what the issues in bullying are, what's going on with that, how can we help? And I've had teachers who've been wonderful who will say, Danielle, can you tell me some of the words that you use in your program, and I'll use them with the student. So that's also really helpful. And it gives awareness, I think, in a different way to the school of maybe what's going on from another perspective. So, and then we have 3 meetings with the parents. And so, and then we have another week where we do what's called, which I think is very important, the locus of control, which is what we have control over in our lives and what we don't. Because I think kids who are bullied, and even the parents who are dealing with the kids who are bullied, feel like they're powerless. And they really have no control, and their lives are just being hurt and ruined and all of that. But that's not actually always true, because we have more power even when we're being teased or cyberbullied online than we think we do in how we respond and how we act, how we choose to walk away from situations, how we choose to disengage and not to let them know they're bothering us further. And I think when kids learn at some point, and I learned this as a kid when I was teased, that if they don't have attention from you and that you're not showing them in your actions and your responses that they're bothering you, and you move to another area or you disengage, it's a lot harder to bully someone that way.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying it doesn't happen at all, but it's a lot harder when they're not getting the attention that they want.
Yeah, you're giving them tools.
Yes,
yeah.
Exactly. So that's another week of the program. We really talk about that whole locus of control. And then we have 3 follow-up sessions, 1 month, 2 months, and 3 months later. We want to see if what we're doing really works and the kids can hold on to the coping skills and the parents that they learned in the program.
How excellent. And how do you price your program?
So I price my program. I take a couple insurances so I can bill by the hour with the insurance, or I can also do a sliding scale based on W-2 forms and how much income people make.
Mm-hmm. And when you look at your business as a whole, what percentage of your business is this 10-week program and what percentage is other things?
You know, what's really interesting right now is my percentage of the program is very minimal compared to the rest of my private practice or, podcasts or speaking things. It's actually more minimal at this point right now. So, it's being piloted. So we're trying to look at what that means and, for the program. But I think it can be very useful. But I think parents have time constraints at times. And so, it can be hard to make a commitment to a longer program that's more extensive sometimes.
I see. Okay. And so do you end up doing a lot of, one-on-one sessions or family sessions with people outside of the program too?
I do. I do I do family work. I do some couples work, and I do family sessions and individuals and teenagers and kids from probably 11 up that I see. I don't see little kids. And so I do that as well. So I wear a lot of different hats. And then I love to go into the community and speak on bullying and educating schools, and then doing other things as well, like writing blog articles, seeing movies when they come out so I can write a blog on it, like 8th grade that just came out not too long ago.
That was amazing.
Yeah, wasn't it good?
Yeah,
I loved it because it made me uncomfortable, and that's what 8th grade is, that discomfort that you feel. Bo Berman did a great job really showing that and making us feel it. Yeah. So that was really good.
And how are you marketing your business, and how are you finding that your clients are finding you?
I have a really good marketing person that does all my social media and does all my posts and stuff. And she puts the blog up, and puts the newsletter together based on my edits and stuff on a monthly basis. So I have someone who's really keeping me in the social media realm all the time, and reminding me when I have to write a blog or an idea for a blog or editing a blog, whatever has to be done. So, and we keep up with Instagram, Facebook, and all the others that are really important. We just make sure our presence is known.
Cool. So this is somebody who is helping you with the strategy, but is also just kind of staying with you so that you're accountable for.
Yeah, I had a couple people who've been helping me with strategy and implementation at the same time. So that's been helpful, just to know where to go with things and what posts are good to put up that are very empowering, and helping with what should be in a newsletter, what should be included in a blog article. So me not being from a business background, it was good to have and hire someone for consulting of marketing and implementation of marketing to really help with those skills to get the business going.
And what do you notice, and I'm not sure if you know this or if this is something that they're tracking, but what do you notice works in terms of your social media presence? Do you find that there's certain platforms that bring in more people?
Yeah, it is. My Twitter is huge compared to like Facebook. Yeah, it's really weird. And I just did a blog article on these 2 Disney child actors that I know. And we talked about bullying and their experiences of bullying. And it's done really well on Instagram and not as well on Facebook, as another example.
Okay.
But it's very interesting, the different social media platforms and what is seen.
Yeah. So you're finding Twitter and Instagram are places that people are really paying attention.
I think so. I think more in some instances than Facebook, and in other instances not so much. So it just depends, but more so like with some of the blog articles and some of the posts that I do, I'm finding that, Twitter and Instagram, depending on what it is, like these 2 childhood actors, I think are well known on Instagram and Twitter. So more people will see that.
Yeah. And, have you experimented at all with Facebook ads or Instagram ads?
I boost. So I do boost stuff on Facebook, and I'll boost usually blog articles once a month. I'll boost, and sometimes occasional other articles I'll boost just to see if I get more of a following and it reaches more people more.
And one thing I'm noticing is about you and your business is you've gone really far for how long you've been in business. So a lot of therapists, it takes a long time to get themselves to the place where they're ready to do something beyond the therapy office. And it sounds like you really, it doesn't just sound like, it's clear that you did that really quickly. You wrote your book, you created this program, and you're out in the community and you're speaking about this and making an impact. So What's up with that? Like, why do you think you were able to take action so quickly?
Well, so what I did is I'm a planner. So I
Okay.
started working a few years ago with a business coach, and then we wrote the program. But while I
Mhm.
was in the process of writing the program, I had my full-time job still, which wasn't doing private practice. And so then I started some private practice while I was still working and getting it started, and I was still completing the program. And when the program was completed, probably in February 2016,
Mhm.
and so then I started marketing it and networking, and I still kept my full-time job, and I started doing some private practice work. And I decided, I made a 6-month plan of what I was going to do to make money to be able to pay the difference in bills that my full-time job was not going to handle before I left the job.
Mhm.
So that is what I ended up doing, is coming up with a plan of action.
So you came up with kind of like what I think of as the leap point, like you figured out what your leap point would be.
Yes.
Great. Yeah.
Yes, and I did it for 6 months before. So the program had been written. I was starting to get out there and network. I started private practice, and I got myself on some insurance panels to start my business again, because
Mhm.
I had been out of private practice for a while. I'd done it many years ago, but I was now coming back. So I had to figure out a way to get a referral base together. So I had a biller who would do the applications for insurance companies, and a lot of them are full. So there's not like there's that much opportunity necessarily. And it takes about 4 or 5 months for the panels to see that you're on them.
Mhm.
So it does take, and I knew that time was going to be in between before I actually had more practice time. And so I was still trying to work full time until those panels were established.
And with creating a program and marketing it, you're really describing what I think is true, and that a lot of times people don't know, that it takes a lot of time behind the scenes. It takes a lot of
Mhm.
really commitment and consistency to create something and market it, and and test it and tweak it, and
That's
really
right.
have
That's
it
right.
succeed. That people see it, they're like, oh, you have a program and
Yeah.
you put it out there. Maybe I'll do that. But it's so worth it, but it takes a lot.
It does, and it takes time and money to put into a business. That is the
Mhm.
other real piece, is you do have to have some money to put into a business, because it's not going to just start on its own. So you have to, put, and I've heard that by a lot of people, is that you have to be willing to put some money in initially to get some back. So
Yeah, and it sounds like you were already thinking of it as a business, which obviously it is, but it's sometimes something that therapists struggle with, is really seeing what they're doing as a business. Was there ever an identity crisis for you in being an entrepreneur and being a business owner?
you know, I think there's hard times in learning life lessons that I've had to go through over the last couple of years in terms of being a business owner, and the highs and lows of trusting in other people and making sure that I really know that I sign off on everything. And
Mhm.
ultimately, I am the final word, and I have to have that responsibility to be that word, even when I'm asking other people to help with parts of my business. Ultimately, it's me who is accountable.
Yeah, that's a really interesting balance, right? Between having your eyes on everything that, especially that really matters,
Mm-hmm.
and being able to delegate.
Yeah.
So really not micromanaging, not trying to do everything yourself, but also knowing what needs oversight and what you need to
Yes.
look at. Yeah.
And what you want to pay for that you can't do yourself versus you doing things yourself as well. And I
Mhm.
really learned that, what I can do as well, and where I need help, it's almost like knowing like your strengths and weaknesses, like where your strengths are and where they're not, and where you may need some more support.
Yeah, like from the outside looking at your business, I would think, and then tell me if I'm getting this right or not. Like, I would think that the stuff that only you can do is the speaking engagements, the actual writing of, not necessarily editing or putting them out there, but the actual writing and creating of the content. And then, of course, the clinical work, unless you end up having other folks working with you in that way.
I do all the clinical work. I write a lot of the blogs, and I definitely am part of it. And usually they're then edited, and we discuss it. And I do all the presentations and the speaking engagement.
Yeah. And sometimes it's hard it's hard for people to think of beginning to let some of those other pieces go.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
so getting over that hump and delegating, especially in the very beginning, I think is the hardest.
Yeah. And I think, the harder part too is your monetary funds, right? And how you're going to spend them and what you choose to spend them on and what you're making. So you have to really, it's a balance to really look at what you have and what you're able to spend to make things happen, because you have to put money, I believe, into your business to be able for it to be successful.
Yeah, I totally agree. And that when we're investing, we can look at, well, what is going to actually directly get me to my most important goal? Like what's going to actually, like, let's say it's filling one's practice or it's filling a program. It's like looking at what are the things I need to invest in that will actually get me closer to that. And rather than thinking of it as just spending and expenses.
So I always look from the bigger picture standpoint of what will come and what I accomplish in the bigger picture if I invest in this now. What is the bigger picture going to look like to me? Because I'm a big picture person, because I want to look at the bigger understanding of things.
I love that, Danielle. I think that the question I was asking you earlier about like, what's up with how you've gotten so much done? I bet that's a huge piece of it is you being able to see the big picture.
Yeah, I try. I'm not perfect at it, but I certainly do the most I can because I'm looking down the road at what this can do, how this could potentially help me. And I'm asking those questions of myself in my head.
So Danielle, if you could time travel to when you first went into business this time around, what would you tell the Danielle of that time?
To stay hopeful and never give up. My mom said something really interesting to me the other day. She said, live your dream. And so I'm really trying to do that now.
Beautiful. So what's the very best place for therapists to find you and find your book and throw compliments at you?
Thank you. Amazon is where my book is located. And my website is empowerment.space. And if they want to reach me, my email is on there at dmatthew@empowerment.space.
Excellent. Thank you so much. It's been so wonderful for you to let us come behind the scenes and learn more about how you've created this as well as why. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having me, Annie. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks for listening. If you're ready to do something beyond the therapy room, you're going to need support. Join me for Rebel Therapist Mastermind, a small group program that takes you through the entire process of developing your vision, building your platform, and bringing your vision to the world. Maybe you're going to create an online program or a retreat or a workshop. Maybe you're going to write a book or start a podcast. If you're ready to do more and step into a bigger vision for your business, this is for you. Learn more and get on the waitlist at rebeltherapist.me/mastermind. Again, that's rebeltherapist.me/mastermind. Okay, I'll see you next week. Wait, I'm sorry. Let me do that over because it'll be better if they're not distracted by my fuzziness.